Camp Hereford, Texas, September 15th, 1943, 14:32 hours. When the American sergeant handed him a steaming metal cup, Captain Alessandro Torriani laughed. 18 months in North Africa, drinking ersatz coffee made from chicory and acorns, had taught him to expect the worst from enemy hospitality. The laughter died with the first sip. Real coffee. Rich, full-bodied beans, something he hadn't tasted since 1940 grid. Reference 3478 on his intake card would become the coordinates where everything he thought he knew about. America crumbled into the bottom of a dented metal cup. In Rome's briefing rooms, they'd called Americans soft, jazz-corrupted weaklings who couldn't stomach real war. But here, behind Texas barbed wire, Torriani was about to learn what 425,000 Axis prisoners would discover across 120 American camps. The enemy they'd been taught to despise was feeding them better than their own armies ever had. Want to know how badly they underestimated America? Drop Unbreakable in the comments, because this story gets more shocking with every meal. 14:33 hours. Reality adjustment begins. Sergeant Miller slid a meal tray across the wooden table. Beef stew, fresh bread, canned peaches, whole milk. More food than most Italian officers saw during special occasions. "This is for prisoners?" Torriani asked. "Geneva Convention minimum," Miller replied. "Plus a little extra." "We got plenty." 3 words, "we got plenty," would haunt Italian intelligence reports for the next 2 years. 14:47 hours. Barracks 7. Torriani's boots echoed on clean concrete floors. White-painted walls, not the peeling grey he'd known in North African trenches. Electric lights that stayed on past sunset because Americans had power to burn. A real bed with mattress, blankets and pillow, luxury items the Italian army had stopped providing officers in 1942. Lieutenant Marco Castellano, captured at Kasserine Pass, occupied the next bunk. "Been here 4 months, he said in Milanese-accented Italian. "Still can't believe it. The conditions? Everything. Wait until you see dinner. 15:30 hours. The inventory that changed everything." Camp mess officer reads the daily supply list. Beef roast, 47 pounds. Fresh milk, 80 gallons. Bread loaves, 240. Coffee beans, real coffee beans, 12 pounds. Butter, 15 pounds. Sugar, white sugar, 25 pounds. 1 day's supplies for 847 prisoners exceeded what most Italian military units received in a week. But Mess Sergeant Williams delivered it with casual efficiency. Fresh produce from California, meat from Kansas, dairy from Wisconsin, coffee from South America. Arrives twice weekly, regular as clockwork. California to Texas, a done 200 miles. Fresh vegetables transported further to feed enemy prisoners than Italian supply lines could manage for friendly troops across 50 miles. "How much does this cost?" Torriani asked. "Cost?" Williams looked confused. "It's just food, Captain. We got more where this came from. 16:45 hours. Mathematics of defeat. The numbers were impossible to ignore. Italian front-line rations, 1,800 calories daily when supplies arrived. German Wehrmacht, 800 calories for active combat troops. American POW camps, 3,200 calories guaranteed, regardless of how many Americans you'd killed. 1 day as an American prisoner delivered more nutrition than 3 days in the Italian army. The enemy was feeding captives better than Il Duce fed his own people. But behind the numbers lay something more disturbing: systematic abundance. Every POW camp received supplies through logistics networks that made Mussolini's trains running on time look amateur. Refrigerated rail cars carried fresh meat across 3,000 miles. Factories produced more canned goods monthly than entire Italian provinces saw yearly. It was like flipping a switch in the sky, except instead of light, America had turned on prosperity and pointed it at prisoners of war. 17:15 hours. Medical impossibilities. Dr. Miller examined Torriani with equipment that exceeded most Italian civilian hospitals. Blood pressure cuff, stethoscope, medications that actually worked. "You were severely malnourished when you arrived. We'll get you back to proper weight. What's this treatment going to cost me?" "Nothing. Geneva Convention requires medical care, but honestly, we'd do this anyway. It's what doctors do. 2 hours later, Captain Wilson, the camp dentist, fixed 3 teeth using anesthetic and equipment Torriani had never seen in Rome's best private practices. Dental care is medical care, Wilson explained. No charge, no paperwork, just get you healthy. American military medicine for enemy soldiers surpassed Italian civilian medicine for paying customers. 80 new hours. Workshop revelation. In the metalworking shop, American instructors taught precision machining using equipment superior to most Italian factories. Technical education more comprehensive than Italian technical schools, provided free to enemy personnel. Why train us in your methods? Asked German Corporal Muller. Because skilled workers rebuild countries faster than unskilled ones, the instructor replied. We want Europe reconstructed and prosperous, not devastated and resentful. Economic cooperation serves our interest better than economic destruction. Americans were investing in enemy education because productive former enemies made better allies than devastated former enemies. 19 to 30 hours. Letters that broke the myth. Evening mail call brought correspondence from home and from other camps. The reports were identical across America. Camp McCain in Mississippi, same food quality. Camp Concordia in Kansas, same medical care. Camp Hearn in Texas, same recreational facilities. But Torriani's letter from his wife Maria told a different story. Bread rations reduced to twice weekly. Children ask about meat, but none since July. German authorities requisition what little remains. He compared his wife's starvation to his current dinner. Roast beef, fresh vegetables, real coffee, and chocolate cake for dessert. His enemies were feeding him better than his allies could feed his family. 15 hours. The game that proved everything. Baseball. Americans versus Italians. Final score, Italians 7. Americans 6. The American guards cheered when Italians scored, congratulated good plays, and invited everyone for coffee afterward. When your enemies celebrate your successes, what does that say about the nature of your conflict? The baseball itself told the story. Leather stitched in American factories, shipped to a Texas prison camp, provided for enemy recreation because Americans considered prisoner morale part of proper administration, not cruelty. Not indifference. Systematic kindness as routine policy. Rome, Italy. Intelligence Ministry. October 3rd, 1943. Colonel Guido Martinelli stared at the pile of intercepted letters covering his desk. 47 from Camp Hereford alone, plus reports from German intelligence, Red Cross inspections, and medical repatriations. All describing the same impossible reality. Major Benedetti, he called to his aide. Read this letter from Captain Torriani. They serve us meat daily, real meat. The guards treat us with more respect than our own sergeants showed Italian privates. I sleep in heated quarters with electric lights. Propaganda? Benedetti suggested. Then explain this Red Cross telegram, confirming everything. Average prisoner weight gain, 12 to 18 pounds within 3 months. Medical care rated superior to baseline European military standards. Recreation facilities exceed convention requirements by factor of 3 to 1. October 15th, 1943. Martinelli's classified assessment. American resource capacity permits luxury expenditures on enemy personnel without apparent strain on war production. This suggests industrial capability that exceeds our estimates by orders of magnitude. When prisoners of war eat better than active soldiers, strategic resistance becomes meaningless. The enemy possesses systematic abundance we cannot match through tactical innovation or individual excellence. His final line would prove prophetic. Sir, when your prisoners eat better than your soldiers, you've already lost the war. But by October 1943, Italy had already surrendered. The intelligence about American abundance arrived too late to change strategy, but not too late to understand why defeat had been inevitable. November 1943, the pattern spreads. Letters from 425,000 prisoners reach families across the Axis. Not propaganda, but witness testimony, systematic abundance applied to humanitarian objectives with casual efficiency that made caring for enemies look routine. Captain Romano wrote from Camp McCain, "They organized Christmas celebration for prisoners. Trees, special meals, religious services conducted by American chaplains. Holiday gifts because maintaining prisoner morale is considered normal administration." Lieutenant Palazzo from Camp Concordia. "The Americans provide musical instruments for prisoner orchestra. Yesterday I heard Italian prisoners playing American songs on American instruments, applauded by American guards who treat concert performance as routine cultural activity. 425,000 witnesses, documenting American institutional superiority through practical demonstration rather than theoretical argument." December 1943, the deeper lesson. What Italian intelligence finally grasped wasn't just American military superiority, it was civilizational superiority. America hadn't stumbled into abundance. America had built abundance through systematic institutional development that coordinated individual productivity with collective welfare. Constitutional government that protected individual rights while enabling collective action. Economic systems that rewarded innovation while ensuring broad prosperity. Educational institutions that developed human potential while maintaining social cohesion. American abundance resulted from systematic organization of human motivation, according to principles Italian political philosophy had never successfully implemented. March 1945, the baseball that changed history. During a routine game between guards and prisoners, an Italian officer hit a foul ball that dented Torriani's metal coffee cup. The American umpire called timeout while everyone searched for the ball, not because regulations required it, but because Americans treated lost sports equipment as community problem, requiring collective solution. When found, the American sergeant handed the ball to Torriani. "Keep it." Souvenir of the day Italians beat Americans fair and square. That dented cup would travel home with Torriani, carrying more strategic intelligence than any military report. Proof that enemies could demonstrate systematic kindness without strategic necessity. Abundance without apparent limit, and institutional superiority through humanitarian application rather than military domination. April 1946. Repatriation. Before departure, Colonel Harrison addressed departing prisoners. "Gentlemen, you came here as enemies of the United States. You leave as men who experienced American hospitality under difficult circumstances. We hope you remember that America makes war on governments, not people." The farewell dinner featured real steaks, ice cream, and small American flags on each table, not mockery, but acknowledgement that enemies could become humans again under proper institutional arrangements. Torriani kept his dented cup. Every morning for 41 years, he brewed coffee in it and remembered the taste that taught him the difference between propaganda and institutional reality. Interview transcript. Rome, March 12, 1963. "Captain Torriani, when did you know Italy would lose the war?" "The coffee. I'm sorry." September 15, 1943, my first day in the American camp. "When I tasted real coffee again, I knew we'd already lost." 20 years later, successful businessman Alessandro Torriani imported American goods to Italian markets. Not from admiration, but from institutional understanding. America had demonstrated systematic capability for producing abundance and sharing it efficiently, even with enemies. We'd been told Americans were soft, weak, unable to sustain real war. But systematic abundance applied to enemy welfare revealed institutional strength we'd never recognized, the strength to remain civilized while exercising absolute power. Of 425,000 Axis prisoners in American camps, fewer than 1% died in custody, lower than some American civilian hospitals. Compare that to Allied prisoners in Axis camps, where death rates reached 40%, reflecting institutional inadequacy rather than deliberate cruelty. The hardest lesson wasn't the defeat. It was realizing our enemies possessed institutional capabilities we'd never developed. When enemies treat prisoners better than allies treat soldiers, you understand the war was never competitive. December 18th, 1987. The final lesson. Alessandro Torriani suffered his heart attack while drinking morning coffee from the dented cup. Found at his kitchen table with a half-written letter to his grandson. Some nations build more than they need so they can share with enemies. Others need more than they can build, so they take from friends. His grandson Marco still uses the cup each morning, brewing coffee while remembering his grandfather's institutional lessons about systematic abundance, efficient organization, and humanitarian victory that demonstrates civilizational superiority through generous treatment rather than cruel domination. 3 generations of Italian family using an American military coffee cup to remember that some victories prove you don't need cruelty when you have systematic abundance. The reconstruction of Europe succeeded partly because 425,000 former Axis soldiers served as witnesses to American character. They had seen Americans at maximum power, holding captured enemies, and witnessed American choice of systematic kindness over systematic cruelty. When witnesses testify that victorious enemies demonstrated institutional superiority through humanitarian abundance, post-war reconciliation becomes educational opportunity rather than political submission. Want to know what other weak American innovations ended the war faster than expected? That radar technology guiding bombers through clouds was hiding capabilities that shocked even Allied commanders. Hit subscribe and share this with someone who thinks they know the real story of World War II, because sometimes the most powerful weapons are institutional. Capabilities that prove you don't need cruel weapons when systematic abundance demonstrates civilizational superiority. The coffee was just the beginning. But sometimes the beginning contains everything necessary to understand why some wars end with reconstruction and reconciliation, while others end with revenge and resentment. American abundance, systematically applied to humanitarian objectives, even for captured enemies, even when no strategic advantage required such application, even when simpler cruelty would have been easier and cheaper. Just systematic kindness, because systematic kindness was considered normal, American institutional behavior. The coffee cup remembers, and the lesson it carries transcends military history, that societies demonstrate true strength not through the cruelty they can inflict on enemies, but through the humanity they maintain even when humanity serves no immediate strategic purpose. Sometimes the most important victories are moral victories that create foundations for lasting peace, rather than tactical victories that generate cycles of revenge. The dented cup sits in a Roman kitchen, brewing coffee each morning, reminding 3 generations that American victory in World War II proved institutional superiority through systematic abundance, shared even with those who had tried to destroy everything America represented. That's the real story the coffee cup tells, not just military victory, but civilizational demonstration that systematic abundance, efficiently organized and humanely applied, creates more durable strategic advantage than any weapon ever forged. The coffee cup remembers.